Okay, hands up who doesn't like an emergency set. I love emergency sets. I love that Midland one. It's probably the crappiest one out there, but I love these kind of things. When the last one we ever saw was the Jason in the very early 90s. So I've got two of these here. This has been preempted because one of our trade dealers has bought one in for his personal collection, which will be coming in a couple of months. So I thought we'll do one of these Cobra SOSs. And Cobra produced two radios back in 1981, and they were made for them by Maxon. And the first one was the Cobra 21XFM, which is a mobile set and is a Maxcom 4E, or a Midland 2001, or a Colt 295, or any of those. It's one of those. And then the other one, which is pretty unique, is this. It's the Cobra SOS. And then Cobra didn't produce anything for the UK market until the Hideaway sets in the early 90s. They did the first one they did in the early 90s. All the electronics was in the box you put under your seat or wherever. The second one was not a good idea. All the electronics was in the handset, which got red hot when you went in to transmit. And from then on, I don't think anything on the UK market from Cobra has been, frankly, any good. So, what we got? So you get this red case. This one's got a broken lid. As you can see, there's a catch missing on that, and this one hasn't. These have got all the screws, which is more than can be said for the one that my customer has. They're both manufactured May 1982, and they both clearly say manufactured for them by Maxon Electronics, serial number 1467 and 1379. We're going to do the rapier one, and when you bought these, obviously you got an outer case. I do prefer the little attaché cases with some padding than these, because that is going to happen if they get kicked around a bit. So to open the case, you press the PTT switch and it undoes. And inside here is a folding magnetic antenna, which says Cobra on it. And you're also supposed to have the fag lighter connector, which it hasn't got. So neither of them have got cigarette lighter connectors. This one has got absolutely nothing. But they fetch a pretty penny these days. The recommended price was £69.99, and I reckon I probably paid 45 quid for the broken one. So we're going to do the broken one today. We'll do that one some other time. Always do the more broken one first. You see, I listened to what my mother said. Here's the instruction book. Now, back in the 80s at the time, I made sure I photocopied every instruction book that came through. And so I now have, scanned into my computer, the instruction book. So I'm pleased about that. Oh, the other thing you got was a pennant flag to stick on top of your aerial to say, help. Our customer says he's got that flag with his. So they call the squelch the range selector. So I know what's inside these because I know another set that uses the same innards, and there is the circuit diagram. So what is that other set? Well, it's the Comtel base station. You see, what happened, there was a fire at the warehouse where these were in stock, and although the stocks of Cobra SOSs weren't damaged as such, and I'll just tell you the model number, it's a 39XFM. 39XFM. What happened was everything was smoke damaged. So what they did, instead of putting them in a big skip, they took the works out of all these smoke damage sets and they made up Comtel base stations with them. And look, you get a fag lighter and you get a folding antenna with a base station. And I expect these were done in the UK, probably by somebody like Texemco, specialising in bulk modification. And they added a meter and a power supply. We've covered that set before. There's one on the shelf behind me, and it became the Comtel base station. So really it's good that despite that fire, the sets continued, the works actually went into something else. So you can imagine the Comtel base station performance isn't going to be brilliant because it's an emergency set inside it, isn't it? So at least we've got the square kit diagram because of that. Oh, and it tells us on the circuit that the cigarette lighter is positive centre. So it uses an LC7137 as a synthesizer. It uses an MC3357 as the FM chip. So you can imagine it uses the Kia 7205. So it's the Kia version of the Toshiba 7205. The snag there is it's a lower format, and you do find trying to get the Kia 7205 rather difficult, and you can't always substitute the Toshiba device. So I'm hoping that my lead I have down here somewhere, which I use on realistics, is going to fit. We know this is positive centre. So are they a 12 volt set or are they a 13.8 volt set? Does it say on here? Nope. Does it say on here? So it's 13.2 volts. So we wouldn't be a problem on 13.8. So you can run this type with the engine running. Shall I do a test first? Yeah, I'll tell you what, we'll do a test first. This is an unknown set, so I will power it up with care. Power supply on, 9 volts. So that powers up all right. Let's go to 13.8. There we are. I'll get it connected through an aerial adapter to the test equipment. And we'll use the Motorola type adapter, which we would use on the realistic handhelds. So it's SO239 to phono stroke Motorola. I've said before these fit in the back of a 1970s car radio, and you can get them on eBay. SO239 to phono or Motorola. Connect that up. I wouldn't say these are ever the best connection. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll just run round it with the fiberglass brush. I'm not a lover of phono connectors. Squelch works the opposite way to what you'd expect. So it hisses there. It's because it says near and far. You can see why they've done that. Mr. Chippy's going to have a problem when he does the on-the-air test. Oh no, he's going to be doing a field test, and he will have a problem because he can't legally pick this up because he's going to end up with the mobile phone laws. So he's going to have to put it on his seat, and he's going to have to talk from a distance. So we'll have to bear that in mind. but I'll get him to pick it up. Have these got a low power switch? And the answer is no, they haven't. We won't be able to do our newfangled low power test on one of these. So we'll put channel 20 into the signal generator and see whether this one receives. The answer is yes. And we'll see whether it transmits. We're going to the 3 watt range. Press transmit. It's more than 3 watts. It's just over 3 watts, 3.1. Deviation. Wallow. Oh, I'm going to have fun with the power, but it's not really tight enough. Wallow. It's about 1.4. It's a bit low. So we can't do a SINAD test because we haven't got an extension speaker. So we will, when we do the alignment, we'll just have to hook it up there and then. Right, so switch it off and we'll get it opened up. And the other unusual one is the Harvard SOS, the H469, which is 3-channel crystal control. I think it's 9, 19 and 30, I would think. 4 watts, but limited to the 3 channels because I said it uses crystal control. And just like the Harvard handheld, it uses oh, that's the CB coming through over the tannoy system on an adjacent channel. It uses MPSU 31 as an output transistor, so they're quite hard to come by. Unplug it. How does this open? Oh, we've managed to open the 2 halves. So that's the printed circuit side, and this is the speaker side. Now, I tell you what, you don't get a speaker that big in a mobile set these days, let alone an emergency set. Didn't think I could get that back in, did I? There we are. Right, we'll get it connected back up. See whether we can get more than 3.1 watts out of it. That volume control could do with a bit of spraying. So tune up for transmit. I look at the circuit, we've got T4 and then we're going to be moving on to those. So there is a voltage, not voltage doubler, there's a multiplier which you don't want to be really touching, or you're going to end up with it having to be reset on a spectrum analyzer or a grid dip meter. So around here you've got, like with the Route 66 we did, you've got this multiplier, so it's best to keep that away. Fingers off that. It's T2 and T3. T2 and T3. So we can't see what the locations are of any of the parts, so it's all really guesswork. But I can see from the layout to what we've got on the circuit, that's going to be T4, and then we've got those. So let's go into transmit. I'll tell you what, I'll just use the 3 watt range to do that first one, because although it's full scale deflection, I will just see some difference. It was already absolutely spot on. See whether we can do that one as well. Yeah. It's dropping off with temperature now, but being able to do that. I better put the soldering iron on. I think arguably the realistic TRC 1004 is the poshest of all the emergency sets. I recall it being actually $149.99 at one time. That's brought it up a little bit. That's actually brought it up to 4 watts. There we go. Now just for giggles, we'll see what it's drawing in current. Just over 1 amp for 4 watts. That's pretty efficient, isn't it? 1.02. So deviation, where's that's going to be living? Because all we're going to, I would think we're going to have a squelch preset. Now let's look at the circuit diagram. We're obviously going to have deviation. We're going to have a squelch preset. So the squelch preset is RV1, shown at the top there, and the deviation will be whatever presets, yeah, whichever one's left. Tell you what, we'll get it on frequency first before worrying about that. So let's go over to the frequency counter. $79108. So it's not off frequency, but it needs pulling up, seeing as it's here. So the trimmer for that is going to be the one next to the reference crystal, and the reference crystal, I'm hoping it's that one there, and I'm not going to start messing with the VCO. It is, I'm right. Excellent. So we're now going to look for presets. So you're going to expect deviation to be somewhere around that area, whereas you're going to expect the squelch preset to be somewhere around this area, around the MC3357 IF chip. And there we are, we can see RV1 just down there. So we know RV1 is the squelch one. So whatever else we find in here will be the deviation. And there's one just down there under the channel selector switch. So that's going to be deviation. So let's try and cram our... Oh, where is the microphone? Oh, it's there, isn't it? Let's put that there and press transmit. Go back to the first meter. Wallow, that's too loud now. Too loud, man. It's difficult when you can't get anything near. Wallow. Just needs to come up a fraction. Wallow. Wallow. It still needs to come up a fraction. Wallow. That's too loud. Wallow. That's it. We got there eventually. Not easy when you've got a microphone over there. So we have to spray the volume control. We've done that. We're on frequency. That's the transmit done. This is easy, isn't it? We've got no silly meters. Don't need any of those. That helps me. So looking at the receiver, so we know that we've got transmit, 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 transmit. I will take a photo of this, do the usual thing, and then I can scan that and put that in with the file on the computer for this type of set. It will also help us with the Comtel base station. You probably see more of those when you do these. Right, so we've got, looking at the circuit diagram, we've got T8 as the detector by the looks of it. So basically we're looking at T6 and 7 for the front end and T8 for the detector. So it's going to be, oh hang on, we've got T3 as well. T3, 6 and 7. 6 and 7 front end, that looks IFE, and then we've got that. So it's not going to be as, although it's double conversion super heterodyne with 455 and 10.695 IFs, it nevertheless is going to be a simpler receiver than something you get in a mobile set. So this is why we've got 4 down here. Can I see any of them? Well, that's T8, and I said T8 was the detector. So that red one's the detector. So can I see any of the others? Well, I can see an IF filter here, so I suspect that's going to be T5. So I think we've got front end, 10.695 IF, and then the demodulator. I think that's what we're looking at. Now I'm going to have to hook up my test gear so that we've got an input to our SINAD meter, etc. So switch all that on, switch the oscilloscope on. Hopefully we can pick up an earth through the aerial. So I should just have to connect the inner. Let's see what happens. So turn the squelch down. Yep, that is what's happened. So I'm just on the positive of the speaker there. So I'm going to put an S9 equivalent signal of 100 microvolts on the radio. We'll go over to the oscilloscope. Put enough volume on so we can get a decent display. And see whether we've got that peak. Miles out. Absolutely miles out. That would have sounded dreadful. So we now want the SINAD meter at about 4 dB. Now I have adjusted that, but let's just see what 10 dB or what 12 dB reads. So it is 1.6 microvolts for 12 dB, so it's not that hot. Let's see whether we can improve that. Not with that one, we can't. Tell you what, we can with that though. That's come on by leaps and bounds. We drop the signal generator level. Wow. I'm going to go back now on that one. And I expect this one's IF, so we'll just go a little bit higher signal. See whether we can improve that. We can, yeah. Okay, we're done. So let's see what now we've got for 12 dB. And the answer is we've got 1 microvolt. So that's fine. Good. I'll just change scales and read it off on the other scale. Exactly 1. So they both agree. They're both 1 microvolt. Oh, good. Well, that's going to be alright round scratchy corner. Now we've got the squelch to look at. So I'm going to turn the squelch to full. I like it to be able to squelch out 100 microvolts. Is that going to be the case with a emergency set like this? So we're at 1 at the moment. 3, 10, 30, 100. So I think that does want adjusting. It's coming in at 300 microvolts. So it's that VR1, which was there. That's it. 100 microvolts and it comes in. That's excellent. So turn the squelch to minimum. We'll put the signal generator to standby. And we've parked it at 0.3 of a microvolt. Set the squelch. So remember, it's the opposite way. A lot of business radios are this way around, like the Tape 500s and the Pike Cambridges if we go back to the late 60s. Right, we'll put the signal generator back on. And the squelch is coming in at 0.52 of a microvolt and leaving it 0.4. That's a jolly sensitive squelch. Very impressive. Well, that worked out alright. So we've got 4 watts, full deviation, and 1 microvolt for 12 dB SINAD. So you can't argue over that. But I say it's a bit of a simplistic receiver, and it's potentially therefore going to be a bleed over box, and so to build it as a base station was questionable, but I can see why they did it, and I'm glad they weren't all thrown in a skip and they did get turned into something else. I mean, looking at the capacitors in there, I can't see any snags whatsoever, and you don't expect this kind of set to have been thrashed because it's not very convenient to use as a base station. So there we are, we're done. All I've got to do now is put it back together. I've got to stop that. From flopping down, so it might be best if I put it together with a slight angle. Yes, he's done it. So in 6 or 8 weeks' time, we're going to be probably getting this other one in from the customer. I'm just going to put it on the aerial and we'll just have a flick round. It's Sunday, it's about 1:30 in the afternoon. I'm able to cram this in because I've got no church services this afternoon, which is unusual for me as a church organist. The next radio we're going to do, I was very, very kindly, and I really, really appreciate this, given an audio line 340, which was a gentleman's late father's, and he wants me to service it on a video because he really wants to see that in operation. So we'll do that. We'll go through the capacitors and that. So probably do that tomorrow, and then we'll be back on to customers' sets, starting with Steve's box. I say he bought the Cobra 69, 31 didn't I say? Where did I get 69 from? Anyway, let's put it on an aerial. And I'm pleased with how that worked out. So there's nothing wrong with it, just wanted a bit of a service. Right, get that plugged into the aerial. One Nana Roger. So immediate criticism is that this would be helpful if it had a TX LED. I know it's transmitting because I can see my ammeter going up to 1 amp, but it doesn't give you that reassurance. I think there's a bit of a skip-up situation today. 1919 Roger. No, well that's not unusual, is it? Right, I'm going to do some photos. We're not going to draw this to a close. I've gone and taken this apart, haven't I? We're not doing the photos. I'm not going to do it again. We'll do the photos up next one we do. So at least I've covered it, and I kind of know what I'm doing for next time. But that was silly. I should have taken the photos before putting it back together. Right, well, thank you for watching the Cobra 31XFM, did we say? 39XFM. I want to put that on a piece of paper inside, put a Dymo label on it. It's a 39XFM. But everybody's going to call it a Cobra SOS, aren't they? That's what it says on its plastic lid. So this was the worst one of the two I've got. And I think this came in a batch of radios. I probably bought about 8 radios off eBay at some time a few years ago, and this was one of them. Whereas the other one I brought with the aerial included, I did buy individually. So I'll probably do a field test with Mr. Chippy, and we will go out with that aerial like we have done in the past, and see whether we do all right with it. So far, those little mag mounts, I think the best we've had out of them is 4 miles, to be honest, if that's what I remember rightly, and that was the Maxon 7E was the best one. So we are. Thanks for watching the Cobra SOS emergency set from 1982.